module, we will look at the navigation systems installed on the ATR. First, we will start with an overview, and then explore the various navigation systems, including VOR, ILS, marker beacon, and DME, ADF, radio altimeter, EGPWS, weather radar, GPS, and FMS. The ATR is equipped with the following navigation systems: VHF Omnidirectional Range, or VOR, Instrument Landing System, or ILS, Distance Measuring Equipment, or DME, Automatic Direction Finder, or ADF, Marker Beacon, Radio Altimeter, Enhanced Ground Proximity Warning System, or EGPWS, Weather Radar, Global Positioning System, or GPS, and Flight Management System, or FMS. The navigation system uses numerous antennas that are mounted on various locations on the exterior of the aircraft. Navigation information feeds audio signals to the Remote Control Audio Unit, or RCAU, so that the crew may identify and verify station identifiers. The RCAU is the central processor of audio signals from all of the cockpit electronics. There is a separate processor for each crew member, which controls audio based on what the crew selects on their individual audio control panel, or ACP. There are different channels of output for headsets, loudspeakers, etc. There are two navigation receivers, VHF Nav1 and VHF Nav2. Each navigation receiver integrates VOR, ILS, marker beacon, and ADF receivers. If a single DME receiver is installed, it is integrated in the VHF Nav1 receiver. VHF Nav1 feeds data directly into the Integrated Electronic Standby Instrument, or IESI. Both receivers supply data to the Data Concentration Applications, or DCAs, located in the core avionics cabinets, or CACs. Data is then fed to display units 1, 2, 4, and 5, as well as both multifunction control display units, or MCDUs. There are two independent VOR receivers installed on the aircraft. The antennas for the VOR receivers are located on the vertical stabilizer. The VOR receivers are tuned using the Virtual Control Panel, or VCP, and the associated Multifunction Control Panel, or MCP. The VCP appears on the lower right side of the multifunction display, or MFD. Click on the Nav button on the MCP to view the VOR navigation page on the VCP. The four arrows on the MCP are used to select the field that you wish to modify. The Enter key is used to activate that field. A cyan box appears around the selected field. You can then use the numerical keys to enter the desired frequency. The standby and active frequencies can be swapped by selecting the field in between the two frequencies. It should be noted that you can directly change the active frequency without the need of entering a standby frequency. Navigation frequencies can also be set on the MCDU. Here we have the initialization page displayed. Click on the Data key to continue. This will open the Data menu page. Click on the Line Select key R3 to continue. The Navigation Frequencies page shows all the tuned navigation frequencies. The Automan line indicates whether the associated radio is tuned automatically by the FMS, or if it needs to be tuned manually. In the case of the latter, MAN is displayed in a larger font than Auto, indicating that manual is the current mode. Let's see how to tune Nav1. Click on Line Select key R1, the one adjacent to Nav1. The last action will display the navigation tuning page for the selected receiver. The nearest nav aids are listed on this page, along with their bearing and distance. Press line select key L1 to manually tune nav1. The nav tuning page for nav1 is displayed on the MIG2 screen. Frequencies are entered in the scratch pad. You can set the active or standby frequency by pressing the line select key adjacent to active or standby, respectively. Click on line select key R1 to make the standby frequency the active one. It was mentioned previously that the FMS can auto-tune frequencies. If you manually set a frequency, the tuning mode of the nav receiver automatically defaults to manual. Pressing line select key R6 allows the user to change the tuning mode from automatic to manual, and vice versa. The navigation page also enables you to hold the DME associated with the frequency, and change the sensitivity of the marker receiver. The aircraft is equipped with two ILS receivers, ILS-1 and ILS-2. ILS-1 is located in VHF NAV-1 receiver. ILS-2 is located in VHF NAV-2 receiver. The IESI uses ILS-1 only. The ILS receivers are independent of each other. However, they share the same glide slope antenna. The localizer antennas are actually the same antennas used by the VOR system, located on the vertical stabilizer. The ILS receivers supply audio signal information to the RCAU. The ILS receivers are tuned using the VCP and the MCP. The MIG2 is also used to tune the ILS frequencies. The procedure is identical to the VOR tuning. The ATR has two marker beacon receivers. Although independent of each other, the two marker beacon receivers share the same antenna. The marker beacon antenna is located on the bottom side of the fuselage, just forward of the main landing gear base. The marker beacon receivers are designed to receive marker signals from the outer, middle, and inner airway markers of an ILS approach. Station passage is indicated by an audio signal and an indication on the primary flight display, or PFD. The sensitivity of the marker beacon system can be adjusted on the nav tuning page of the MIG2. The sensitivity of the receivers can be adjusted to low or high. This sensitivity is changed by pressing the adjacent line select key. The DME system measures the slant range to selected stations. The DME distance is displayed on the PFD and the navigation display, or ND. The DME has 3 channels, which allows it to lock in on 3 different stations. Channel 1 is associated with VOR/ILS1, and Channel 2 is associated with VOR/ILS2. Channel 3 is always tuned automatically by the FMS. DME frequency selection can be controlled by either the VCP or the MIG2. Basically, whenever you tune an ILS or VOR frequency, you are also tuning the associated DME channel. One feature of the DME system is that you can hold a frequency. Basically, when you hold a DME frequency, you can continue to obtain distance information from that navigation source, even if you change the frequency later on. On the VCP, a DME is held by checking the DME hold box on the VOR/ILS page. On the MIG2, you use line select key L2 to select on for DME hold. On the PFD and ND, A held DME is indicated by the sign H displayed next to the DME distance. Unlike the ILS and VOR receivers, each DME receiver has its own dedicated antenna. The DME antennas are located under the forward part of the fuselage. The DME receivers supply information to the RCAU. An automatic direction finder, or ADF system, includes a single receiver and associated antenna, which is located on the top of the fuselage. Some aircraft have an optional second ADF receiver, which has an associated antenna located on the bottom of the fuselage. The ADF radios are tuned using the VCP and the MCP. The procedure is similar to accessing the VOR/ILS radios. Press the nav button on the MCP, and then press it a second time to access the ADF page on the VCP. The MCDU is also used to control the ADF radios. This is done by accessing the navigation page, and then pressing line select key L3 or L4. This will display the associated ADF page. This page enables you to control the active and standby frequencies, mode and tone selection, or access pre-stored frequencies. ADF bearing information drives the bearing information on the HSI on the PFD, and on the ND on the MFD. The aircraft is equipped with a radio altimeter which provides an indication of the aircraft's height above the ground when the aircraft is below 2,500 feet AGL. There is also an optional second radio altimeter. The radio altimeter system provides inputs to the multifunction computers, or MFCs, the automatic flight control system, or AFCS, the traffic collision avoidance system, or TCAS, and the enhanced ground proximity warning system, or EGPWS. The radio altimeter system consists of a single transceiver and two radio altimeter antennas. The two radio altimeter antennas are located on the bottom part of the fuselage, forward of the landing gear base. Height is determined by reflecting radar signals off the terrain. This system uses the leading edge of the reflected radar wave to calculate the aircraft's height above the ground. The radio altimeter reading is displayed on the bottom part of the attitude indicator on the PFD. The system also drives the altitude above ground indication on the altimeter. The display can indicate altitudes between 0 and 2,500 feet. A decision height can be set using the Associated Index Control Panel, or ICP. This selected value is displayed in the bottom, left-hand side of the attitude indicator. An additional DH label is displayed when the aircraft descends through the selected decision height. The ATR is equipped with an enhanced ground proximity warning system, or EGPWS. EGPWS provides 6 reactive modes named Modes 1 through 6, as well as 2 predictive warning modes for terrain and obstacle cautions and warnings. This system uses internal terrain, obstacle, and airport databases, along with information from the GPS, radio altimeter, and barometric altimeter to predict a potential conflict between the aircraft's flight path and terrain or obstacles. The controls and indicators for the system consist of 2 GPWS push buttons on the glare shield, a GPWS selector switch, a terrain-guarded push button, and a GPWS annunciator light. Terrain or obstacle conflicts result in the EGPWS providing visual terrain alerts that are automatically displayed on the ND, as well as oral alerts. It should be noted that EGPWS is not to be used for navigation purposes. Terrain information can always be displayed on the ND by selecting the terrain option on the ND overlay page on the VCP. If the overlay is selected, a cyan terrain on label is displayed on the lower right side of the ND. The terrain display takes precedence over the radar display, so selection of the terrain display will replace the radar display on the ND. The caution and warning envelopes below and in front of the aircraft are based on airspeed and the current flight path angle. Mode 1 alerts are generated when the descent rate is excessive while the aircraft is close to the ground. If the aircraft's descent rate, below 2,450 feet radio altitude, exceeds a certain value, the EGPWS issues an oral sink rate warning, and the amber GPWS caption illuminates. If the descent rate increases, the EGPWS will announce pull up, and the red pull-up caption illuminates. This warning will continue until the aircraft's descent rate is corrected. Mode 2 alerts are issued when the terrain closure rate is excessive. This would occur when the terrain is rising rapidly when the aircraft is in level flight, or the terrain may be rising faster than the aircraft is climbing. Mode 2 alerts are generated by the EGPWS based on radio altimeter, airspeed, landing gear and flaps configuration, and the terrain database. Initially, the system will generate the terrain oral alert, and the amber GPWS caption illuminates. If the closure rate is not corrected, the EGPWS will eventually issue an oral pull-up warning, and the red GPWS caption illuminates. The oral warning is repeated until the aircraft's closure rate is reduced. During the correction, the pull-up oral warning will be replaced with the terrain oral caution. Mode 3 provides warnings when there is a significant altitude loss after takeoff or during a go-around. In the event of an altitude loss after takeoff or go-around, the EGPWS will issue an oral don't sink caution message, and the amber GPWS caption illuminates. Mode 3 is disabled when the aircraft has gained sufficient altitude and is no longer in the takeoff or go-around mode. It is active up to 1,500 feet after takeoff or during the missed approach. Mode 4 provides unsafe terrain clearance alerts and warnings during climb, cruise, initial descent, or approach. The EGPWS uses the radio altimeter and the aircraft's position in relation to the terrain database. Mode 4 actually consists of 3 sub-modes. Sub-mode 4A provides alerts in the event there is inadequate terrain clearance when the aircraft is not in landing configuration. The boundary for sub-mode 4A is 1,000 feet radio altitude. Sub-mode 4A alerts consist of an oral too low, terrain warning, and an illuminated GPWS caption. Submode 4B provides alerts to prevent a gear-up landing. The boundary for submode 4B is 500 feet radio altitude and up to 190 knots. The oral alert associated with submode 4B is a too low gear oral alert, and the amber GPWS caption illuminates. Submode 4C is activated when the aircraft is on approach with the landing gear extended and the flaps are not in the landing configuration. The boundary for submode 4C is 245 feet radio altitude and up to 159 knots. The oral alert associated with submode 4C is a too low flaps oral alert, and the amber GPWS caption illuminates. In the event of an abnormal flap position, the submode 4C too low flaps oral warning can be disabled by the flap override position of the GPWS selector switch. Mode 5 provides below glide slope deviation alerts when the aircraft has penetrated the glide slope alert envelope and is below 1,000 feet radio altitude. If the aircraft is more than 1.3 dots below the glide slope, the EGPWS issues a soft glide slope oral alert. This is called a soft alert. If the aircraft is below 300 feet radio altitude and more than 2 dots below the glide slope, the EGPWS issues a loud oral glide slope alert. This is called a hard alert. In both cases, the amber GPWS caption illuminates. Mode 6 warning provides oral callouts below certain radio altitudes, as well as an oral alert for excessive bank angles. The alerts associated with an excessive bank consist of a bank angle oral alert, and the amber GPWS caption illuminates. The EGPWS will issue an oral minimums callout when the aircraft descends below the selected decision height. A failure of any or all GPWS modes is indicated by the illumination of the amber fault caption on the GPWS annunciator light. All GPWS functions can be disabled by placing the GPWS selector switch to the off position. The eGPWS database has a terrain clearance floor, or TCF envelope specified for each runway in the database. The TCF provides an additional protection envelope for the aircraft, regardless of the configuration. If the aircraft penetrates the floor, the eGPWS will generate a too low terrain alert, and the amber GPWS caption illuminates. The altitude of the floor decreases as the aircraft approaches the runway. An additional floor envelope is specified in the database for runways that are significantly higher than the surrounding terrain. This envelope is called the Runway Field Clearance Floor, or RFCF, and it is based on geometric altitude. This envelope extends 5 nautical miles from the runway, and has a ceiling of 300 feet above the field elevation. A too low terrain alert is generated if the aircraft penetrates this boundary. eGPWS provides terrain and obstacle awareness based on the GPS geographic position and the aircraft's altitude. These two pieces of information are compared to the worldwide terrain database to predict potential conflicts between the aircraft's flight path and the surrounding terrain. The terrain overlay shows terrain as patterns of colored dots. The color of the patterns depends on the altitude of the terrain in relation to the aircraft's altitude. In the event the system predicts a conflict, the terrain will automatically be displayed on the NDs, and the display range automatically defaults to 10 nautical miles. the system will generate a terrain advisory line on the terrain map at the point where a terrain caution alert will occur if the current aircraft trajectory is maintained. The conflicting terrain are shown in solid yellow. In addition, the system will generate a terrain ahead or obstacle ahead oral alert, and the amber GPWS caption illuminates. If the system detects an imminent collision, EGPWS will generate a warning in the form of a terrain ahead pull-up or obstacle ahead pull-up oral alert. In addition, the red pull-up and GPWS captions illuminate on the glare shield. A terrain overlay will automatically pop up on the ND, and the display's range defaults automatically to 10 nautical miles. The warning will continue as long as the current aircraft path does not safely clear the obstacle. If the aircraft is not able to safely climb above the terrain, the system will generate an avoid terrain oral alert instead. The crew will need to immediately initiate an evasive maneuver to avoid impact. Terrain can be displayed on the ND by selecting the terrain option on the ND overlay page on the VCP. Click on the terrain option to display terrain information. When terrain overlay is selected, the cyan terrain label is displayed on the navigation display. Terrain replaces the radar display if the radar overlay is active. As you saw previously, in the event of a terrain event, the terrain overlay will automatically pop up on the ND, replacing the radar display if it is the active overlay. In the event of one or more GPWS mode is lost, the fault caption illuminates in the GPWS annunciator light. Both master caution lights flash. An amber GPWS message is displayed on the engine and warning display, or EWD. And a single chime sounds. All GPWS functions can be deselected by placing the GPWS selector switch in the off position. The predictive functions of the EGPWS are enabled when the terrain push button is pressed in. Off disables all predictive functions. If some or all of the predictive modes have failed, the fault caption illuminates. Both master caution lights flash. An amber terrain message is displayed on the EWD. And a single chime sounds. A color weather radar is installed on the aircraft. Once operating, weather radar returns are displayed on the ND. This is done by selecting the WX option on the VCP. The radar display consists of any returns, as well as radar system information, in the bottom right-hand side of the ND. Weather returns are displayed in one of four colors, depending on the intensity of the return. The weather radar provides a coverage of up to 300 nautical miles, and will cover an arc of 45 degrees on each side of the aircraft. The radar can also be operated in the ground mapping mode. In this mode, ground returns are also displayed on the NDs. The weather radar system consists of a weather radar control panel, a radar transmitter receiver, and an antenna located in the forward part of the fuselage. The weather radar is controlled by the weather radar control panel. The operating mode is selected by the radar mode selector knob. The weather radar system is inoperative when the mode selector is in the off position. Click on the mode selector to place it in the standby position. The standby position powers up the radar system. However, in this mode, the antenna is not rotating, and the weather radar transmitter is inhibited. In this mode, a WX standby message is displayed in white on the ND. Click on the mode selector to place the radar system in the WX position. The weather radar is operating when the mode selector knob is in the WX position. If the radar is selected for display on the ND, weather radar returns will be displayed, and a green WXTX message is displayed in the radar status area of the display. Radar returns are colored depending on the intensity of the return. Black simply means that no returns are detected. Returns in green indicate light precipitation. Returns in yellow indicate a moderate precipitation level. Red returns indicate strong precipitation. Magenta returns indicate intense precipitation. It should be noted that the radar will automatically return to the standby mode after the aircraft lands, even if the mode selector is in the WX position. The test position of the mode select. The radar system is placed in the ground mapping mode by placing the mode selector knob in the GMAP position. In this mode, the colors displayed vary according to the intensity of the return. In the ground mapping mode, the radar status indicates WX GMAP in cyan. The test position of the mode selector tests the radar system and displays a test pattern on the ND. In addition, the radar status indicates WX test in yellow if there are no detected faults. Four push buttons at the top of the weather radar control panel provide additional modes of operation. The react mode is selected or deselected by pressing the RCT push button on the radar control panel. The react mode compensates the radar returns for attenuation due to radar signal traveling through precipitation. This gives a more accurate picture of what is happening behind a red zone. A cyan field on the radar indicates that no echoes are present behind a particular target. If precipitation is detected there, it will be presented as a target. These areas should be considered dangerous. The indication that the react mode is active is indicated by the cyan WXRCT label in the radar mode annunciator. The TGT push button activates and deactivates the target alert mode. The mode is active when there is a green TGT label on line 3 of the radar status display. In the target alert mode, the radar will monitor an arc of 7.5 degrees on each side of the aircraft. When the radar system detects a precipitation level 3 or greater, the TGT label turns amber to alert the crew. The radar antenna is automatically stabilized by the attitude heading and reference system, or AHRS, through the CACs, in order to provide a level sweep during maneuvers. This stabilization function can be turned on or off with the stabilizer push button. When off is selected, an off caption illuminates above the push button. Normally, the radar antenna sweeps an arc of 120 degrees in front of the aircraft 12 times per minute. The scan speed can be increased by pressing the sector push button. This increases the scan rate to 24 sweeps per minute by reducing the scanned arc to 60 degrees. The radar antenna tilt can be adjusted 15 degrees up or down by means of the tilt control knob. The amount of tilt is indicated on line 4 of the radar status display on the ND. Gain control adjusts the sensitivity of the radar receiver. The gain control knob is a combination rotating knob and push-pull button. When the gain control knob is pressed, the radar gain is automatically set to a preset calibrated value. Once pressed in, the rotation of the knob will have no effect on the radar gain. When the gain control knob is pulled out, the gain of the radar system can be manually adjusted by rotating the knob to the desired position. When the gain is manually set, The radar status display on the ND will indicate a green G, VAR label. The radar display adjusts itself based on the ND configuration set on the EFIS control panel, or EFCP. So, if you adjust the ND range using the plus or push buttons, the radar display will adjust accordingly so as to maintain the proper location of the returns in relation to the aircraft. The aircraft is equipped with a global positioning system, or GPS, which uses a series of navigation satellites to provide position, ground speed, date and time, as well as data quality information. The aircraft can be equipped with dual GPS. The Flight Management System, or FMS, uses the GPS as a source of location data and date and time information. GPS time can also be displayed on the aircraft clocks. GPS data is displayed on the GPS nav page of the MIG-2. This page shows GPS coordinates, an estimated position error, or EP, track angle, ground speed, altitude, a value that is related to the integrity of the GPS signals called RAIM, a value that is related to the precision of the calculations, called horizontal dilution of precision, or HDOP, the GPS source monitored by the FMS, and the current GPS mode. The aircraft is equipped with a dual flight management system, or FMS. The FMS is the core of the aircraft's management system, and it is used to manage the aircraft during all phases of flight. The FMS handles the management of the flight plan, calculates predicted values, as well as manages the various aircraft system sensors. The software and database for FMS1 is housed in DU2. DU4 houses the software and database for FMS2. The databases include 2 standard navigation databases that cover 2 revision cycles, an optional company navigation database, an optional pilot navigation database, and a magnetic variation database. The 2 flight management systems perform their own functions independently of each other. However, modifications made in one FMS are synchronized with the second FMS, so that both will use the same parameters. FMS is controlled by 2 MIG-2s, 2 VCPs and their associated MFCPs, and the Flight Guidance and Control Panel, or FGCP. The FMS divides a flight into several phases, including ground, takeoff, climb, cruise, descent, approach, and go around. The phase of flight depends on the weight on wheel status, aircraft altitude, location with respect to the top of climb or top of descent, distance to the destination airport, and the engagement of the go-around mode. The FMS performs both lateral and vertical navigation of the aircraft when it is coupled to the autopilot system. Each pilot interacts with the FMS using their associated MIG-2. You can think of the MIG-2 as the monitor and keyboard that you use to interact with your computer. Like a book, FMS data is divided into chapters, which are further divided into pages. Each page on the MIG-2 has a page title that indicates the nature of the data that is displayed. For example, on the screen, you are looking at the initialization page. Data is displayed under the page title. There are 6 lines of data on each side of the screen. In general, each line of the screen has a label that identifies the type of data on the line underneath it. For example, on the screen, we are looking at the initialization page. The first line of the left side shows the current date, as indicated by the date label above it. Keys adjacent to each line, on either side of the screen, are used to enter data or to select it. These are called line select keys, and they are identified by a letter and number. The letter indicates whether the key is on the left or right side of the screen. The number identifies the row of the data. For example, line select key A1 is the top line select key, on the left side of the display. If a line contains a caret, it means that pressing the adjacent line select key will display a different page. For example, click on line select key L4. The adjacent text indicates that the line select key will display the position initialization page. The bottom line of the display screen is called the scratch pad. The scratch pad is used to type in data that can then be line selected to one of the lines. Data is entered into the scratch pad by using the alphanumeric keys on the MICDO. For example, if you wish to modify the initial position when the aircraft is at the gate, you would type in the coordinates in the scratch pad, and then press line select key A1 to enter the data. You probably noticed by now that the screen shows data in different colors and fonts. What is used for page titles, headers, prompts, units, separation lines, special characters, and minor messages and advisories. Cyan is used to denote data that can be modified or selected, and missed approach waypoints. Green denotes data that cannot be modified, active data, reached constraints, active items in selections, or primary flight plan waypoints. Amber is used to indicate alerts, missed constraints, or negative margins. Amber boxes indicate mandatory data, in which case, data can be entered in that field. Magenta denotes targets set by the FMS. For example, on the ND, the active waypoint is displayed in magenta. On the flight plan page of the MICDO, that waypoint is also displayed in magenta. Yellow indicates data of a temporary nature. The MICDO screen on this page shows a temporary flight plan. The text on the screen can be displayed in large or small font, in reverse video, or be underlined. Each of these attributes has a special meaning. Text in small font is used for headers, data labels, units, default values for data, flight plan lengths, or non-active selections. Large font is used for title lines, scratch pad entries, data, active items in selection, and prompts. Reverse video is used for alerts in the title line or messages in the scratch pad. It is also used to indicate data that needs to be validated by the crew. Underlines are used for predicted data on the flight plan page if a constraint exists. The flight plan page shows all the legs of the active flight plan. It also includes information on constraints, course, heading, and the distance between each waypoint. It also shows predictions for the estimated time of arrival and the estimated fuel on board. The flight plan page is identified by the flight plan label. There is also a page number as well as the total number of pages for the flight plan chapter. You can move through all the pages by using the previous and next keys on the menu. Some actions require a validation by the crew. This is indicated by the illumination of the execute light. When this light is illuminated, it means that you need to press the execute key in order to execute the command. This concludes the navigation module.